Hello, everybody, and welcome to the update show for the 11th of September or 10th, wherever you are. So today we got new Medarot 2 bots, the small boys, and information about the new Grey Wolf. If you actually saw my Twitter.
And not just that, we found a lot more information that leads us to assume we have a lot more returnees from the older generation coming in. We're really excited to hear about it.
Yep. All right. So new this week we got Kabuto Benimaru. So he's one of the Medarot 2 boys.
Medarot 4, actually.
Oh, whoops.
Not a big deal, but yeah. He and his twin Bison this is their first official 3D appearance and pretty much their first appearance in a while. But after 20 years of bullying for not being able to hit anything, they finally come back with a vengeance, ready to prove that they can
actually hit something.
Indeed.
So Kabuto Benimaru's head is Yusal, which is basically fire. His left arm is energetic gun, which does Gatling. Makes sense, being that both arms are Gatling and useless. Sort of. You get the point. Right arm is also is also Gatling. And his legs is True Shot, which basically gives you the chance to bypass guard. So this is the first time we've seen a mechanic of this kind. Usually you would cancel a guard using no guard or some sort of similar metaphors. But now you can just shoot through it.
So essentially Benimaru's leg ability is chance at ignoring defense.
Pretty much.
So based on how I'm understanding it then, it looks like he hasn't quite got it through his head to not scatter his bullets so widely. But at least he learned a skill that at least lets him put it to use with the ignoring defense. Aside from that, though, originally what made Benimaru so abysmally terrible was not just the fact that he had bad compatibility with a melee part and two shooting parts in the same kit. And in earlier games, it was there was no metal that existed that accommodated that. But, well,
today,
it didn't really help either.
Pretty much cross.
Yeah,
the zero metal that already does that.
Yeah, and it it didn't help either that his actual success stat in those earlier games was 0. But let's just bypass that for the moment.
Let's ignore that.
Yeah, but it's nice. It's definitely nice to see the Musketeer boys back in action, especially now with some revamped skills and the ability to actually hit something for once. In terms of actual viability. Benimaru doesn't quite hit the mark just yet, but his leg ability definitely will make up for it.
Yeah, if you can pair his legs with other bots, they're definitely useful. But
Indeed.
as a full set, almost, but not yet.
Yeah, he's learning, but he's not there yet.
Likewise, we also have Bison, Choreographer Bison, which is the pair with Kabuto Benimaru.
Now, out of the two of them, Bison, I think, definitely took this time off to properly learn a new skill because his skill hasn't changed too much. Because in the early games of Medarot 4, while his kit now is sword, beam sword, and beam sword, according to the data, originally it was assassin and beam. So now his arms I can understand being considered beam because, well, beam sword didn't exist in Medarot 4. But because of that, he actually suffered the same problem as Benimaru as having bad compatibility, but also the problem that he had assassin for the head, which if it operated the same, this I'm not entirely sure of. If it operates the same, it means if he failed to actually break something, he died.
Okay, that's not a mechanic in Medarot S, except for the crit one on several arms.
No, it does operate the same.
Difference, I know.
Yeah, it does. It does operate the same way in here. So the way they changed him up was Benimaru learned that if he dies, he can't actually improve. So he switched his head part use out for just a basic sword, which makes him a little bit more well-rounded. And Beam Sword itself is actually quite a solid move if you know how to
Especially an
use it.
upgrade. Because
Especially when upgraded.
Beam Sword is basically sword with Pierce.
Exactly. And then you get the ×3 power buff at 100% charge if you fully cap it. So
Yep.
out of the two boys, I think Bison definitely took the time the most adequately to learn a new skill, especially when you pair it off with his leg ability, which is basically the same as Benimaru's, but with melee attacks.
Yeah, and also if you look at their success stats, it's like like his right arm success stat is actually very close to that of a normal Medarot, except for his
Indeed.
left arm, which is more powerful but a very low success.
Right. But then you have his head and his other arm, which actually have incredibly high success.
Yeah, head, yes.
Well, almost 1,000 for his right
Yeah,
arm.
good point.
So, and even at a base damage of 1030, that still puts it pretty solid, especially if you apply the ×2 and the ×3 damage buffs
And then he
with
could be
pierce damage
even
on
better
top of
if
that.
you, yeah, and then he could be even better if you just toss his left arm for something else.
Agreed. So overall, I think I'm gonna have to give the MVP of these two boys to Bison, mostly because, like I mentioned, he took the ability to learn a new set of skills and kind of properly train himself, and not just to newcomers, but even to veterans that have been playing for a while. His kit is still potentially viable. Maybe even I wouldn't quite say meta, but as a new potential nuker type part for anyone that needs a nuker type melee part and perhaps missed out on Black Ram.
Basically, if you don't already have Black Ram or Crucial.
Indeed. Well, yeah, most definitely.
Alright, so next up we have Yin Jiao, who has a leg ability.
If I
What was it
recall
called
correctly, the
again?
leg ability for Yinja O was Captor,
Yeah,
which basically said if the target was unable to dodge or evade, such as you inflicted wave, hold, or deathlock on them, your heat stat went up.
yeah.
Very useful skill I have, especially if you have someone with deathlock on the team or some kind of ailment. And even if wave and hold aren't super viable because they only inflict one or the other, along with a debuff to heat and cool times, um, the captor leg ability will definitely maybe add another spice to those that you may start seeing more of a combination of in PvP.
Mm. And next up we also have next slide Iron Horse, who also has got a leg ability. So Excel grants you a stack of speed charge. So basically you get 5% speed boost up to 4 times, stacking up to 20%.
Right. Which can definitely be pretty solid use, especially on the fact considering
She's actually
that
quite
Iron
fast
Horse.
herself.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's fast already, but if you apply a further speed boost on that, you're already asking for a really speedy ally back and forth. In
Oh,
terms in terms of overall
yeah.
kit, though, Iron Horse is a little bit of a mixed bag in the sense that she's pure setup. So she has, if I recall correctly, her kit was Heal Trap, which damaged any kind of opponent that used healing arts, which in this current meta isn't super viable because healing arts really aren't all that great anyway. Until this supposed buff comes in that is supposed to which is supposed to power those up, so I hear. But her other points on the other hand are Charge Plant, which buffs the amount of Metaforce charge that you get passively. And what was the other arm again?
It was the other arm is it mode. Sorry, forgotten.
No worries, all good. Let me see if I can double check it on my end as well.
Iron Horse, Charge Plant, and Repair Plant.
Okay. So yeah,
So
repair
she's
plant
effectively plant.
actually
She's full trap. Plant.
repair plant can actually be pretty useful too, since it heals a little. Since it heals a little bit of H. No, I'm sorry. It's heal plant's the same as heal angel. So basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, heal plant basically means as long as it's set on the field, and a bot that has a part broken completes a heat phase,
Yep.
they will have a part restored to them at a very small percentage of HP.
Yes, that's correct.
So, in terms of viability, if you're not looking for offense, you could probably get some very solid use out of Iron Horse, especially just between Charge Plant and Repair Plant with a very speedy wheel leg.
And then, if I recall correctly, there's also the female healer, attackers. So you could combine her legs
Absolutely.
for a female Beastmaster, basically.
Absolutely. And on top of that, just to mention, they've been, especially with the new modifiers in PvP, where they may say, ladies' night only, and the entire week is females only, you could probably rule that season of PvP quite solidly with Charge Plant or Heal Plant or Iron Horse just in general on your team.
Mm.
That's not even counting nukers or other defenders. This is just with what she can.
Oop, hang on. I think we lost you for a bit.
Oh, can you hear me? Check, check.
Yep, you're good now.
There we go.
Alright, so next up we have the arrival of the Zodiacs, which
Now
we
this
teased, I
was
think, 2 weeks ago.
Yep, this was the element that we were waiting on for quite some time, and it's so nice to see these models get their 3D appearance for the first time.
Yep.
And they have
Especially when we originally got Warhead Lee.
Oh yeah, and they have such
weird.
fantastic art too. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. They look very modern.
Indeed, but they still maintain the aesthetic that they had in the early days of Navi.
So Taurus is now Desperate Virus.
Which was pretty close to what he had originally before. The only difference was in Navi, his head was booster, which meant if he moved onto another tile before attacking, he got a damage buff. But having Desperate fits his aesthetic just a little more solidly overall.
Gemini has Optical Guard, Hold, and Wave. Thinks the same thing.
Better known the days of Navi as Mr. Please Shoot Me. Because the way guards worked, not just in the early days, but also still now, so it seems he hasn't quite learned his lesson either. The selective guards basically means that he's going to sit on the line and he's going to tank every single blow and only negate the kinds that he specializes in.
Mm.
So that basically means if he sets optic guard, but you go in with power rifle, he's going to go die.
Yeah. Alright, so another thing we note is that you're going to get 2 of these as a pickup gacha.
Indeed. And we're equally excited for those.
We'll review the date later on, actually. So let's see, what's the rest? Virgo's Gunpowder Guard, Charge Trap, and Charge Plant.
More or less the complete antithesis of Iron Horse, now that I look at it.
Mm.
Because instead of having... I mean, she'll have Charge Plant, which is still pretty solid to use, but at Charge Trap, that'll put Metaphor spammers in a little bit of a pickle, since that'll start penalizing them every time they try to use it. And then Gunpowder Guard kind of puts her in the same boat as Gemini, where she'll tank everything on the line except Gunpowder.
Libra has Gravity Guard, NTC, and Anti-Air.
Again, unfortunately maintains the most useless of the bunch, but holy cow, that whip though.
Yeah, that whip.
I actually
when we saw showed... in the game, it's like, oh my god, that's long.
I know. I actually have to admit, I showed the art to a friend of mine who's really big into Navi, and his comments were, and I quote, "I'm dying at Libra's art. The only pose they could put her in where they could fit her on the page." And then, let's see, we have Leo, who comes back with the same kit of Hyper Beam, Missile, and Missile.
Mm-hmm. Scorpio is Hypercrab, Virus, which we do see in the game.
Yep.
Opportunities, View Control, Sword, and Thunder.
Basically the same kit she had before with not a lot of change.
I see. Capricorn with Disruption Clear, Effect Clear, and Effect Clear, which is similar to what she had.
If the opponent is ailed with something, it deals more... No, I'm sorry. If they have buffs, it deals more damage.
Yes.
Okay, so a little bit of a nerf, but not completely useless.
And Aquarius with Charge Plunge, Counterattack, and Counterattack.
Which isn't too nasty, honestly, but the problem with Aquarius now is that she actually needs to spam the attack over and over in order to... Yeah, she has to use it over and over in order to actually start clocking damage, and that's not factoring in if the attack is dodged or defended, or even, or if it attacks the same one. So, while she's now capable of being able to fight back, she's not
now
super
a long-term thing.
Yeah.
So she got buffed to her health, but she also got, basically made a
modernized, but made a little more conventional.
Yeah.
So, but even then, it's still great to see the Zodiac come back officially. Now, as I'm looking at this, we actually are missing a couple of models to complete the series, such as Sagittarius and Pisces. But otherwise, we still have a pretty solid chunk of them here.
Mm. And next up, the one you're probably waiting for, we figure out that we had a new Zero Suicide, which got renamed. And now we got
Death Quasar. Now,
reminds me of the... You know the enemy from Mega Man's not Battle Network, Star Force.
I have actually.
They're all from the stars.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Follow the nebula, the star-based,
right?
The crystal cores.
And it's actually pretty interesting to see that even after they gave him a new model ID of ROZ0, they maintained the element that, or at least the design element from Zero Suicide with the black, with like the dark gray or charcoal black.
No, it's changed to KOL now.
Oh, okay. I was not aware that his model ID was changed back.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that. But yeah, it's really nice to see that he maintains the design aesthetic from the original Zero Suicide, but with a fresh change.
His stats are... Alright, so in terms of the boss battle, he's a bit weaker than Beast Chimera.
Yes.
He's a decent kit. Like about 4,000 on the health and all that. He's actually weaker in terms of his damage.
Yeah, he actually... I was about to say, I actually was able to take on his battle.
Compared to Beast Chimera, I got through him literally on the first shot.
It was the same for me too, honestly. Now, granted, because he's fighting with a float leg, he's already... If I recall, was it float or multi without looking?
It was...
I think it was
floating, I think. Oh, no, sorry, multi.
Right. So he's already fighting with leg compatibility, which Beast Chimera had in the season 2 boss fight as well. So we can negate that ability. But even then, like you said, Death Quasar was definitely a really tanky one, which meant it took a little bit in order to knock him down. The big threat that he has, however, which would actually put him on the same tier as perhaps...
Hang on, you died.
Is...
Again.
One moment. Technical difficulties, folks. Check. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
All right, there we go. All right, sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulty. But what I was going to say is what definitely would put him on the same tier as Parallel Deuce is the fact that while he has leg compatibility, which is what Beast Chimera had in Season 2, is the fact that Quasar has Destroy in his kit. And because of that attack alone, that makes him very, very dangerous if there's more than one on the field, and if your strategy revolves around using a defender of some kind.
Yep.
So while Deuce had the shooting version, Darth Quasar has the melee version of it, which really doesn't matter because it has the same kind of effect anyway of instant breaking any kind of shield or guard. But if you exclude that arm, he actually isn't super dangerous. Virus is a pretty easy attack to deal with, whether your turn skipped or not. And if you're lucky, you can catch it on a melee guard and negate it relatively easily. Basic laser fun. I actually have not seen that in action yet because when I went through the boss fight, or at least the level 1 version of it, none of the Death Quasars actually used it, and I was genuinely surprised.
Yeah, actually, good point. That was the same for me.
So apparently the AI has a very big preference on using the melee attacks, which makes the fight slightly more difficult on the sense that you have the destroy to deal with. But aside from that,
lucky.
Yeah, that true. That too.
Because they use random moves.
Yeah, but that aside and excluding that, you're right. He definitely does. He's definitely a little bit easier than Beast Chimera, not significantly because it still expects you to be well raised. And at this point in the game,
when
if you're this far in the story,
bots.
Yep, I was gonna say if your parts are not raised to at least capped 4-star, you're gonna be struggling a little farther back because while chapter 1 of the story, or season 1, I guess I should call it, it definitely wanted you minimum raised to 3-star if you wanted to be able to have a shot at least clearing level 1 of Parallel Dose. Season 2 of the story basically picks up right where it leaves off and expects that in the break that we have not had any addition to the story, you've been taking the time to limit break and raise your parts to higher ranks. So basically, if you haven't been doing that through season 2, season 3 and Death Quasar is basically going to look you in the face and say, "Are you raised? No? Oh, well, sorry, come back later," and then absolutely murder you.
Yes.
Assuming you're able to get that far.
So at least once you finish chapter 2, it's just more of the strategy and having that 5-star critical.
Exactly. And even if you aren't able to fully cap to 5, which is a requirement with the harder fights for sure, but you can still clear them with 4-star easily since the level requirement is about 70. So that means even if you fully limit cap to 4-star, you should still be able to feasibly make your way through the fight with difficulty, but still clear it.
Yeah.
But season 3 definitely is a test to make sure you've been paying attention to limit breaking the parts and putting a strategy together for sure.
Alright, speaking of the hard battles, we got 2 new hard battles.
Oh,
so the
these
first
are always
one
fun.
is the Little Apprentice Musketeer, as in Kabuto Benimaru. And these fights are a lot harder than the original 4 that we got.
Oh, indeed.
So the first one is Benimaru, Christopher, and Rollstar. Though they don't use their pure kits actually.
Nope,
so
actually, I took one look at them. I didn't attempt the challenge yet, but I took one look at the bot lineup for the challenge, and I literally almost double-taked at least 3 times because I'm like, what is this? And they're all using Benimaru's legs.
Yep.
And I think another friend of mine was
they
looking.
have a match of hands also, arms also.
Oh yeah, and Rollstar was an absolute riot when you looked at him because it was Rollstar's head, Benimaru's legs, but it was both of Beast Chimera's arms.
Oh.
So I'm like, well, somebody skipped leg day.
And also that Rollstar was just a troll.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So anyway, the missions, the restrictions are max 1 melee part for the first battle, minimum 4 shooting parts for the second battle, which sort of makes sense. I mean, it's sort of easy to do.
Yeah.
But the hardest one of the lot is cannot use shooting parts, enemy medals. Also, you have Baby Blue and Horny Devil.
Yeah, and
Baby Blue
again,
is full kit except for the leg.
Yep, Actually, if I recall
Actually,
correctly,
no, sorry, only a head.
no,
Correction.
it was the head and the right arm, and then he was using Spinag's left arm, and then a compatible leg. So
Yep.
I took one look at this after figuring out what the challenges were. I'm like, yeah, I can probably finish the first two, but I guarantee I'm not going to actually finish this one since my strategy's main preference is shooting. Now, granted, if I can find a decent couple melee parts to fully cap to 5-star, like for instance a good beam sword, I could probably pull it off a little more feasibly. But it's going to take a little while to properly raise it. But for sure, this new edition of the EX trials, for lack of a better term, that really put to the limit a player's ability to put a team together, not just under specific requirements, but also with competitively viable teams. So they're not just pure sets with, you know, limit broken medals or whatnot. We're talking fully competitively viable to where even just going back to Death Providence's EX trial in level 2, they have a stun locker that uses both ice shot and thunder shot, but also on the requirement that you can't use shields.
Yeah, okay, so BRTMN0, I can't pronounce that. Say that the
Benimaru one's pretty doable.
Yeah, the Benimaru is easy.
Yeah, out of both challenges, looking at them, Benimaru's actually is significantly easier. Oh, hey, it's good to see you with us, Toasty.
Hey, Toasty.
But yeah, you are correct. Benimaru's actually is probably the easiest of the two of them, with the only major drawback being you can't use shooting parts. Unfortunately, that means for someone like me who mains shooting parts as a preference, I can't finish that one until I get until I fully raise something.
Yeah. Like also at the same time, Benimaru misses.
Yeah, he hasn't quite learned his lesson, but he's kind of getting the idea.
But yeah, Bison is definitely harder because he has actual not missing.
Well, not just that either. His requirements are a lot heavier and a lot more intense as well.
Yep. So actually, if you have a solid melee, you can ace it. It's just the tank legs that might be a bit tricky.
Well, not just that one either. It's also the female bots only on level 3.
Yeah, most of us are on male Sony, by the way.
Yep, that challenge would be pretty tough. Now, absolutely.
If you have the female bots, I think it's doable.
See, if you lucked out and picked up models like Hardness 10 and Deer Stage in the past, and you got lucky with a few of their parts, you could probably pull it off a little feasibly. But if you have to kind of scratch something together from what you did manage to pick up, you might have a little bit of a struggle.
So the restrictions are max 1 shooting part, which you can pretty much sidestep by just using melee. Tank legs are a bit hard because tanks are slow.
Yep.
And they all use normal legs, which adds to the fire. And females, yeah, as you said.
Yep. Well, these aren't called EX challenges for a reason. They definitely have that extra level of difficulty to really put to the test a player's ability to put a team together.
Yeah. All right. Next up is the new leg abilities we're getting. So the first one is Fortress, which reduces 10, 15, 20, 25, or 30% of incoming damage on a successful defend. That really makes someone a lot tankier.
Will definitely make preserving HP upon attacks really solid. But right now, it's only one model that has it, and that is Perunun Jelly.
Yeah.
And on a tank leg, it makes sense it's going to be on a tank leg, but it's a little bit more of a drawback to make you ask, do I want to use this?
But if you actually combine it with other bots, like Knight Armor,
absolutely,
it could be very useful.
Well, not just that, it could also be very potentially useful for Bison's new EX challenge too, with tanks only.
Yeah. Good point. All right, so next one we got Excel, which gives you a stack of charge boost up to 1 to 5 times depending on the rank of the part, which is basically a 5% boost stack up 20%.
Yep, and we mentioned before that Iron Horse is one of the two that has this ability. If the code is correct, even though it hasn't been applied completely just yet, Hawk Decker is supposed to have this too.
Hawk Decker does have it, I think.
Well, she's supposed to, anyway.
Yeah, Hawk Decker does have it.
Right. So
I just completely messed up the second slide, the next slide.
Right. Well, it is definitely good to have that mobile boost on hand, though, because if you have a speedy leg already, you're going to become even speedier.
But the question is it actually worth wasting 5 turns or 4 turns actually?
Right. Well, I don't think it's worth wasting, the 5 turns straight to get that solid boost, because if you're doing that back and forth, you're probably not doing the match correctly. Unless you have a very specific strategy that requires it, and then you have a one-shot, one-kill that has a heat number of 0.
Mm.
So it's definitely a useful skill to have, but definitely not quite one to abuse.
Next one is Bullet Rain, which gives 40, 80, 120, 160, or 200 success and power if you have more shooting parts than your opponent.
And the key word here with this phrasing is intact shooting parts. So if a part's broken, of course the game's not going to count it, but that's kind of common sense to begin with.
And then we also got Benimaru's and Bison's signatures, which are True Attack and True Shot, which gives you a 10% per rank to bypass guard with the respective type of ability.
And because they're base 3-star, that means they already start at a 30% chance right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but you never know when that extra damage may come in.
Yeah, especially when what's it called? Bison actually has a solid damage output.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which makes him useful as a full kit.
Mm-hmm. Especially this late in the game, using pure sets. I mean, unless there's a requirement on it, is something you want to try to avoid. If you want to keep up with the meta, but there's very few models that actually you could use a pure set of and use it pretty feasibly. And to my surprise, if you're going to use him as your nuker, then Bison is definitely one of them.
Yep. Okay, so we've covered Seti King, Bullet Rain, Hawk Decker, and Iron Horse both as SL. Benimaru and Bison have shot and attack respectively. Maroon generally has Fortress. And I think that's it for this week.
No, we do have Horny Devil as well, who has desert terrain. But we mentioned that last week, and just to rehash on it for anyone that missed it, basically what Horny Devil's leg ability is actually the same one that they gave Poison Scorpion when they first released leg abilities, and it's that it gives automatic S rank compatibility to desert-based terrain on top of whatever else they're compatible with. And what makes Horny Devil in particular very, very useful of this skill is the fact that it's a wheeled leg. And wheeled legs have very, very high mobility at base already, but they have very poor compatibility on all but about 2 terrains. So the fact that he's going to get the high mobility on top of having the compatibility with desert terrain will make it a truly invaluable part to raise, especially on a PvP map that will be on desert terrain.
Yep, which also brings us to Fierce Battles, which are our 3 new bots with not new bots, but bots with leg abilities.
Right.
Particularly Jelly, Yellow Turtle, and Horny Devil.
And it is nice to see Horny Devil after he got delayed, 2-3 times roughly?
Yeah. But he got delayed twice.
Yeah. But I'd say the leg ability makes it worth the wait, though, because it definitely, and that's the entire reason why I gave him MVP of the week in my weekly posts, is because that leg ability alone will make the high mobility and the terrain compatibility very, very useful in PvP or in any other kind of EX trial or whatever else, that it's on desert terrain.
Yep. And next up, we have the returning of the space rubber robots. Have you had any hearding of them? I don't think they've appeared since like Navi either.
No, they only showed up in Navi.
Two Navi.
They only showed up in Navi, and then they never showed up again. But I must admit, with the addition of the new story, we got some really, really nice backgrounds for these too.
Oh yeah, let's get to the backgrounds. So we got this command center, some alien great landscape, alien beach, forest, wasteland. This is back on the space station again. And then their waiting area.
So very, very, very nice, well-made backgrounds in general, honestly. They never fail to disappoint.
Yep. So, the first of the space rubber rebels, we have Ryan, who's actually the first one that I see that actually is pure armor. The last one was like one success.
Right.
Which was Squid Guards.
Right. And even then being on armor, at least the way I found it, if you're not going to be able to main mobility, which currently is still the meta, with Medarotters like Gilgirl and Isaki, or even in Sea Slug, as the top 3 ones you want to use because of the mobility boost, armor, I think, is the next best one you want to aim for. And when he does come out, you definitely want to try to make use of Raze in this one, especially for your defenders, to make them a lot tankier.
He has the most armor out of every single meta fighter to date.
Agreed. And normally the Medarot stats are meant to only passively bolster what else is there, because you never see an upgrade beyond maybe 150, 170 at best. But the fact that you're getting almost over 350 HP to both your arms and over 500 to your legs is really quite significant. In fact, I'd even say if you're not going to go for speed, you're definitely gonna go for armor for your defender. Because these kind of numbers that you're getting here are definitely nothing to sneeze at.
So next we got Kirika, which is head armor, right arm cooldown, and anti-melee. That's quite a lot of armor.
Most certainly. But that's also quite the interesting spread for passive skills between armor, cooldown, and then a resist stat.
Smog, which has hate heating, right arm success, and left arm power. I think he's actually above average.
He's pretty solid, actually. Especially with that left arm power. That could be used especially for nukers if you wanted to really take advantage of that extra power output.
Yeah. And then we got Sakuran, who's left arm heating, cooldown, and armor. Which really pumps that.
Right. Which also can be very useful with the potential nuker with heat and cool if you're not going to go for power. And then with the leg armor getting an additional 400 plus HP on there.
And then we have Noodle, who's a head purist with head armor, success, and power.
More or less the same as Retort, but with a couple extra stats.
Yeah.
So also another really solid one to use.
And then we got the main villain of the Space Rubber Robo, Professor Kazabai, who has right arm power, left leg status, and anti-range.
Little bit of a mixed spread. Not potentially useful, but a little mixed.
I don't think he's that good though compared to the other.
No, he's
very low.
Yeah.
Of the other stats. Like like the other ones that have one good power, but the rest are just rubbish.
Exactly.
So probably a skip here.
Yeah, probably.
And then this is just the average rubber robo, which is also average. Left arm success, right arm heating, and right arm cooling.
So not terrible stats, I suppose, if you had to use him, but definitely not the best either. But excluding Kazanbai and the basic Robo, the Space Generals actually has some very solid skills to them. And if they go live, when they go live, they're definitely worth picking up and raising.
Yep. Okay, an update on the main story translations. Now that we actually got all the technical problems on the wiki sorted out, sort of. I'm still getting reports of people connecting. But that's a database problem, and I need to fix that too. But I'm hoping to get the rest of the story translated by the 2nd and the 16th of October. And next, we have the new medal, which we found out last week. So it's melee, ranged, and assist with multi-leg, flight, and aquatic. So the meta forces are hyper repair, non-evasion, not invasion, and regenerate.
Now, I was actually kind of interested in how this medal would go after I saw the sprites for it, but after being able to take a second and look at its skills, this is another medal that I would definitely consider as a must for raising, especially because it has non-evasion as a metaforce. And if I recall, I'm gonna go back to that real quick just for a moment. Yes, it has the assist nature with the green gem, which basically means that on top of whatever else you add, you're getting an additional 360 HP to all armor.
And
So
also, regenerate. This is the first time we see regenerate, which basically revives the entire team.
I think
if
it
it hasn't
is.
functioned
So
ceased yet.
let me double check that to make sure. No,
Yeah,
actually,
revives.
We have it on the nurse medal as well. So
okay.
it'll be now the second medal in the game to use that metaforce as its number 3. But this medal definitely is a really, really solid balanced medal to use because you get that additional HP buff to all parts, and then you have non-evasion, which is a very, very dangerous metaforce to use if you're fighting against it, but truly invaluable if you're using it because it basically inflicts the deathlock status on all opponents, which is the 25% heat and cool debuff, and then no longer able to defend or evade. So it makes picking off those more pesky opponents a lot easier.
So it's like a zero medal though?
Pretty much. It has a very mixed range. It has a very mixed range of skills.
Never mind.
Yes. I mean, even if you exclude that, it's a very mixed medal with its skills. But even on top of that, it's still a very solid medal to use.
No, it's not similar to Zero. My mistake.
Well, I mean, it's similar in the fact that it's got 3 completely separate skills that aren't easily used together, I guess, for lack of a better term. But it's still a very, very solid medal to use. Highly recommend raising this one for whatever kind of need that you're looking for in a team.
And if you haven't already realized, it's the Season 3 story report reward. I'm saying the wrong words. No.
Gotta love the language sometimes.